Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at a security landscape that is just changing so fundamentally, so fast. We're going to unpack the current and future state of cybersecurity by looking at two massive forces. First, the immediate power of artificial intelligence, and second, the paradigm-shifting challenge of post-quantum computing.
And these two forces really define the whole security dilemma right now. They create this dual-level challenge. On one hand, you have AI, which demands we adapt right now, today. But then you have post-quantum computing, which needs strategic planning for a threat that's, still a little ways down the road. This isn't just an IT problem anymore. It's something every single organization has to deal with. And fast.
Okay, let's unpack that, starting with AI. It's the tool everyone is talking about, and it seems to have completely redefined both attacking and defending. So how exactly has AI changed the way a cyber attack actually works?
The change is really a shift from, let's say, brute force to surgical precision. I mean, traditionally, attackers would just spray thousands of generic emails hoping one would land. Now, with AI, you see these highly directed campaigns. They're sophisticated, and they're intensely personalized. It gathers all this information, crafts the perfect context, and then just hits a very specific weakness.
Can you give us some tangible examples? Like, what threats are we seeing right now that are only possible because of AI?
Oh, absolutely. The phishing landscape has been totally weaponized. Phishing emails are now hyper-efficient because AI gets rid of all the usual red flags. The bad grammar, the spelling mistakes, that's all gone. The content is customized, the logos are perfectly adapted to wherever the recipient is or their specific company. And even more dangerous is something called business email compromise, or BEC.
Right.
With BEC, AI can generate content for social engineering that is just, it's virtually indistinguishable from a real internal email. It's incredibly convincing.
And when you get into high-stakes corporate stuff, that brings us to things like deepfakes and CEO fraud.
That's where the reputational risk just skyrockets. Deepfakes, so cloned voices, realistic videos, they're being used for high-level extortion or to manipulate huge corporate decisions. Just imagine a video call where the CEO's voice and face are perfectly replicated, and they're telling the finance team to wire millions of dollars, urgently. And what's really crucial here is that these attacks are running nonstop. Automated bots are working 24/7, constantly probing, and they leave far fewer breadcrumbs than a human would.
So if attackers are using AI, defenders have to fight back with tools that are just as powerful. We hear this phrase, a radar that never sleeps, but what does that actually mean in practice?
It means that defense is finally shifting from just reactive signature detection to predictive behavior analysis. AI is so critical because it can figure out a baseline of what's normal for a network, what a normal transaction looks like or what a typical login time is. And then it can spot these suspicious anomalous patterns in real time that a human team could just never process fast enough.
So it's all about speed and foresight.
Exactly. Predictive analysis means the system isn't just waiting for a known virus to show up. Instead, it sees a pattern of activity that comes before a typical attack, like a user suddenly accessing 5 times the number of files they normally do and then trying to send them to an outside server. This cuts response time way down, which shrinks the attacker's window of opportunity. And it also helps optimize how you recover because the AI learns from past incidents. We're seeing this in tools like specialized QR scanners that use AI to spot threats in real time, even if that specific threat has never been seen before. The whole game is analyzing behavior, not just static code.
That dynamic nature is fascinating, but it leads right into the big corporate challenge. If every employee is using these powerful AI tools daily, how do companies even begin to manage that risk internally? How do they control the sheer number of AI tools people might be using?
That's probably the biggest governance challenge right now. We call this internal risk the proliferation of agent-to-AI architectures. Basically, you have employees using tons of different AIs, sometimes unapproved tools, and they're connecting them to internal company data. And that just creates this huge, uncontrolled path for information to leak out.
What does that agent-to-AI architecture look like in practice? Can you elaborate a bit?
Sure, think of it this way. An employee just trying to be more efficient, they copy and paste some sensitive company data. Let's say it's a spreadsheet with last quarter's average salaries or maybe vendor contracts. They paste it into a public, uncontrolled AI and ask it to, summarize the key points. Instantly, that sensitive data is now part of that external AI's training set, or it's stored on some third-party server. It's a massive, instantaneous data leak.
Wow. Okay, so that really highlights why user training is so important. If the deepfakes are perfect, how do you train an actual person to spot the deception?
The training has to evolve. It's not about spotting grammatical errors anymore. It needs to be focused on practical, real-time verification. So one concrete thing you can do is challenge a deepfake during a video call. If you think something is off, ask the person to do something slightly complex physically, like ask them to put their hand right in front of their face or hold up a specific object. Those kinds of actions often cause the deepfake rendering to glitch or just completely fail, and it reveals the whole thing's a fake.
That's a brilliant, simple tactic.
Huh.
On the tech side, how are defenders fighting back against things like prompt injection?
Well, you have to fight AI with AI. Companies like Zscaler are focusing on detecting malicious domains very early. And critically, they're also tackling prompt injection, which is a whole new attack vector. They're not just looking at the malicious request itself, they are analyzing the expected response. So if a user asks for something that seems mundane, but the system calculates that the answer would involve pulling highly sensitive data, that difference throws up a huge red flag.
And for most companies, I imagine they need a single place to see all of this. They must rely heavily on third parties to pull all of that data together.
Oh, absolutely. The defense really depends on these third-party tools. They aggregate all the risk data into these central platforms we call SIEMs, Security Information and Event Management Systems. A SIEM is like the central brain. It collects logs and alerts from every single device and application, and that lets the AI layer cross-reference everything and spot a really sophisticated multi-stage attack that might otherwise just look like a bunch of random isolated incidents. Without that unified view, you can't track these attacks.
Okay, let's pivot now. Let's move away from the immediate AI threats and talk about the long-term, almost existential risk from post-quantum computing or PQC. Why is this considered such a paradigm-shifting threat? Why does it shake the very foundations of cybersecurity?
It's foundational because it just completely invalidates the basic math that all modern encryption is built on. I mean, current encryption algorithms like RSA, they're secure because it would take a classical computer thousands, maybe even centuries to break them. Quantum computing, specifically an algorithm called Shor's algorithm, will solve these problems in seconds or hours or maybe days. It turns an impossible task into a trivial one.
That is just a staggering change in the security timeline. And the scary part is that the threat is kind of already here, right? Even if the quantum computers aren't widespread.
Precisely. This leads to the strategy that we call store now, decrypt later.
Yeah.
What that means is entities, nation states, sophisticated hackers are already doing this massive bulk harvesting of encrypted data. They are stockpiling terabytes of information with the clear intention of decrypting it all later. Maybe 5, 10 years from now, once PQC is a reality. So every sensitive record, every piece of proprietary data encrypted today is really only temporarily protected.
And the consequences for that cut across every sector, even ones built entirely on cryptography.
Yes. Even newer technologies like blockchain, which a lot of people thought were, indestructible.
Right.
They rely heavily on strong crypto, so they're at risk too. If PQC can break the underlying functions, it could open the door to modifying things like cryptocurrency wallet transfers. The whole idea of digital identity and trust is fundamentally at risk.
So given this is sort of inevitable, what are the global roadmaps for adapting looking like?
Well, governments and other large bodies are focused on standardizing new cryptographic methods. The U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, they started on this back in 2022. They're aiming for a completed roadmap by 2030. The European Union followed. They set their roadmap in June 2024, aiming for a framework to be ready for deployment by 2035.
And what are the actual technologies being developed to fight this?
We're seeing two main approaches. One is something called agile cryptography. That just means building systems where you can easily swap out old algorithms for new quantum-resistant ones without having to rebuild everything from scratch. The second approach is using hybrid protocols, where you encrypt data with both a current method and a new quantum-safe method at the same time. That gives you maximum resilience until the new standards are fully tested. But for now, in the short term, the focus for companies really has to be on detecting early quantum attacks and just figuring out where all their critical cryptographic keys are.
All right, let's shift back to the present and near future. Let's focus on compliance and the huge demand now to secure critical infrastructure. I mean, protecting military, energy, transportation systems. That seems like a monumental challenge, especially because these systems can be so old and fragile.
Absolutely. CI environments are often full of legacy operational technology, or OT systems. These systems were built for efficiency, for longevity, not for security. So they're often governed by this really dangerous, outdated philosophy of, if it works, don't touch it. And that creates massive security holes that regulations like the EU's NIS2 directive are now trying to fix, and urgently.
And that vulnerability extends all the way down the supply chain, I'd imagine.
It does. A major part of modern regulation is supply chain resilience. Compliance has to extend to every single third party. Your supplier can't be the weak link. We see organizations like the European Space Agency now mandating that their suppliers have robust business continuity plans, or BCPs, which means they have to detail exactly how they'll maintain operations and secure their systems even during a major cyber incident.
Which brings us directly to NIS2. Why is this European directive sending such shockwaves through corporate boardrooms? What makes it so different from older frameworks like ISO 27001?
The difference is really simple. It's law, and it has financial teeth. NIS2 is mandatory. It's not voluntary compliance. And the financial consequences are severe. You can't avoid them. Fines can go up to 2.5% of a company's annual turnover. A penalty like that immediately turns cybersecurity from just an IT issue into a central business risk that the CEO and the board have to answer for.
What kind of mandatory controls does NIS2 enforce that maybe companies were putting off before?
The requirements are incredibly demanding. They enforce specific mandatory security measures. Key among them are multi-factor authentication for every employee and really robust identity management, specifically something called PAM, or Privileged Access Management. PAM makes sure that only verified, highly audited people have access to the most sensitive systems. It's a vital measure for protecting those fragile OT environments.
And finally, continuity seems to be key. How are tech providers making sure their clients can keep running even if they lose connection to the cloud?
Guaranteeing service continuity, even during a catastrophe, is essential under NIS2. And technology providers are responding with strategies that build resilience right at the edge. Zscaler, for instance, offers a small-scale, local on-prem version of their full cloud service. This little local data center makes sure the client keeps a minimum level of security and access control, guaranteeing they can stay in business even if their main connection to the cloud or the internet is totally gone.
We've covered a remarkable amount of ground today, from the immediate personalized AI threats to the long-term foundational threat from PQC and the severe legally mandated landscape of NIS2 forcing everyone to upgrade. The stakes just could not be higher.
That's right. I think the key takeaway here is the need for agility and for a security culture. Technology has to be adopted faster than ever, and organizations have to be continuously educating everyone, from the board down to the end user who needs to spot a deepfake. The defense has to be dynamic because you can be sure the threats are.
Absolutely. So given that NIS2 imposes these enormous fines right now and PQC threatens to eventually decrypt your entire data history, here's our final provocative thought for you to chew on. If your company had to spend $10 million tomorrow, would you use it to reduce your short-term regulatory fine risk for NIS2 or to accelerate your long-term post-quantum readiness? Think about which risk truly motivates your leadership. Thanks for diving deep with us.